doing all the same things that you would do if it was listed. I don't need to take a listing to take a listing. I always like to kind of start things off with kind of like exactly where your business is right now. And then maybe any bottlenecks that you feel like, or any challenges that you feel like you're possibly experiencing that might give you difficulties to achieving your goal.
So this last year and a half, I'd say, I focused most of my energy went into residential listings, single family listings. That was great, but that's not where I want to be. It's definitely not where I want to be long term. I don't love it at all. I think I mentioned before when we talked in the past and again recently, my plan is always like when the conversation starts, it's like, can I buy this? Can I flip this or wholesale this to someone? Or do I have a buyer out there that the numbers might make sense for them because they're going to do the work or whatever, but not for me? And then can I list it on the open market? So I always try to do that sort of three-tiered approach because I find that if I do the flip, it makes me a lot more money than if I just get a little commission. That's been great. It was good to make some money. But now I've got some flips in progress. That's where I was moving my business toward, is basically more single family flips, some more long-term holds. And my goal this year was to move into more multifamily stuff. And so that's I ended up actually coming across your stuff because your cold calls are freaking awesome. So I was like, it's fun to watch someone who's good on the phone be good on the phone. And so that's how I ended up connecting with your stuff. And that was about it. So my plan has been shift so that most of my energy is going into the investment side, flipping or long-term holds, and moving into commercial as the year progresses. So whether that be commercial listings or more likely around here, probably just like more so trying to find multifamily owners. And I'm surrounded by a lot of small towns. There are a lot of multifamily owners who are tired because they mismanage. And that's kind of what I'm aiming at.
Okay, so then, I mean, where would you like to start? I mean, in regards to support.
Yeah, I'm curious what you would see, because I know you went through this. You were mostly listing SFRs, and then how you transitioned into commercial. I'd be curious how to do that. I'm totally comfortable. I can't say there's a whole lot as far as the conversation side of things. Like when I get a prospect on the phone, that I don't feel comfortable with that initial conversation to set an appointment. But yeah, the problem becomes for me, how do I make that transition into more commercial? And I guess one of my main questions that comes up around that is, it's a small state. I'm licensed in this state. I have a brokerage that wants me in a nearby state. It's like the city is like 2 hours away. And so there's population centers there I could focus on as well if I wanted. But you had mentioned staying within the state. So let's say I have, like, do you set a radius of driving radius, or do you just say I'm going to focus on this entire state? And if I get something up in, where Aberdeen's like 8 hours away, do I go ahead and list that and just, or do you just refer it over to another agent out there? How would you handle that stuff?
Got it. Okay, so let's go this one step at a time. So let's talk about just like the transitional process of resi to commercial,
Sure.
which to me is about, like, it really simply put, it's just like what you prospect, you sell. We spend, what I believe is a really good mantra for it, is that you start with 1 day a week, build up some leads, then it becomes, once you start, get a deal in the pipeline, then it's 2 days a week, then 3 days a week, and so on and so forth. We grow through profit for the transition. So like again, within the next 6 or 12 months, you should be slowly being able to do 50-50 or so, or thereabouts, if not, whatever percentage makes you feel comfortable at that time. But it's not a cold turkey type of thing, especially where where 100% of your income right now is from resi. It would be really silly to stop that and try to do something different.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about, how you do the transition. I like that 1 day a week sort of prospecting commercial.
Yeah, like, listen, like 5 hours, whatever you're doing a day, right? Like, I mean, because that's what the average agent does, right? So we try to, have that kind of mindset of like, okay, 3 to 5 hours every day, and then 1 day a week we do commercial. Maybe, if you end up being you like to get a little frisky, you do 2 days a week, 1 week a month, right? Like you do a little bit extra, depending on how it's going and depending on your buyer list, right? Because it's also important to know, like, the commercial game is about your buyers. Having great buyers allows you to do a lot of business in commercial. Like prospecting for prospect's sake is not fruitful in the commercial business. Okay.
Right.
You want to prospect for somebody in the commercial business. So having a client who is going to buy a commercial deal as an example, and then prospecting for that person is way smarter than just saying, oh, I'm going to prospect this radius, and if anything comes of it, I'll try to figure it out. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll be honest, I don't have a great commercial buyers list. I probably have like a handful, 3 or 4 people that I can call.
That's all you need.
That might be interested in something. Like I got a guy that wants campgrounds. He wants value add campgrounds. So I've got a campground I'm working on now.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I would recommend that you try to find, or even if it means working with another broker to begin with, a buyer who's looking for a very common product at a good price point. Because, like, I'll give you an example. It's like, I feel like a lot of people need to hear this, which is why I always like recording these sessions so I can use this for content. Because I work with a lot of people and they're like, oh, like, similar to what you said, I'm working with a guy who wants, either a campground or like this really weird, like a car dealership, or this really weird, difficult type of asset to prospect for. And it's like, okay, well, if you just prospect for that asset class, what about the 99% of the deals they don't buy? They just have a bunch of campgrounds. Like what are you going to do with it? What's better, or even on like the people who are like, oh, I'm working with this hedge fund who wants to buy 400 unit apartment complexes. It's like, how many of those deals do you think you have in any type of hyper local market you're going to prospect for, and why would they even use you? So it's like, I like the middle ground stuff. That's also incredibly common, right? The 5 to 50 unit product, the 10,000 to 50,000 square foot retail or industrial product, or maybe a little bit larger on the industrial side, maybe like 10 or 20,000 to 50,000, 80,000 feet industrial product. Like the very common stuff that there's a number of buyers for, right? Like if you're too niche, if they don't want it, how you sell it? How many campground buyers do you know?
That's it. I mean, that's the problem, right? Like almost zero.
Exactly. So like I like because I have a guy who wants campgrounds, but I always joke around with people like that. I'm like, so like, I'm going to be honest, I don't prospect for that type of product, nor would I ever have my agents prospect for that. But it does happen to come. We do happen to come across some of that product because sometimes the people who we prospect for also happen to own X, Y, or Z, and we can just know like that's not going to be something we're going to prospect for. I would tell you like prospecting for like a guy who wants 6 families, 10 families, 20 units is way more commonplace. If John Smith, the buyer, doesn't want it for whatever reason, you have the opportune ability to find somebody else who probably wants that product.
How do you go about finding that buyer if you don't have a buyer's list now? Like I'm in a very small brokerage. Everybody's focused on residential. And so I have friends who, I guess I have friends who kind of dabble in commercial that are in the industry. I guess I could reach out to one of them, but they're in a competing brokerage. And so I guess I'm curious how would you
let's play the game out a little bit. So this answers both the question that you have now as well as the one previous about like the target market. My main market is Jersey. We prospect 80-ish% of the state. There's like certain specific areas that we choose specifically not to prospect for in those markets because it's just not the greatest areas, and it's very niche areas, like not good demographics, and just like, and a lot of shore towns just way too far south or way too far north that no one really goes to. And unless you own like 50 properties in that area, you're not buying, like no out of city person is buying that market. Where Jersey's a very condensed market, where in a lot of counties people buy by county sometimes, like it's so dense that people buy by counties, but like some cities are just so far out that like it's just not a market we choose to prospect, right? So that all being said, something like, because again, you're in South Dakota, right? I would tell you that, going in that market, I would try to find the 3 or 4 counties or 5 or 6 counties that are dominant in the state. Okay.
Yeah, I know that. Yep.
And prospect by major counties, even if it's 4 hours away, as long as you have a buyer for it. Okay. And I'll answer the second part of it too, because it's like, listen, we start out by prospecting for a specific buyer. Okay. Now what happens is, let's just say that John Smith, the buyer we're prospecting for, doesn't want the product. Maybe it's a smidge outside the market. Maybe it's a smidge more than they want to spend, whatever. On Reonomy, you can do a reverse search to everyone who owns property in that local market that's similar type of product. Okay.
We'll try to sell it to them basically.
Yeah. And be like, listen, John, hey, John, my name is Henry, a local broker in the market. I have a client of mine who wants to sell their property at 123 Main Street. I see you own 127 Main Street, and I was just curious if you'd be totally against buying another property. Really simple, and a lot of the time they're going to be open to at least getting more information. Just know that probably 1 out of 10 of those people are actually going to be legitimate and being, in a financial position to buy and pay a decent price for it. I like to look at people who bought in the last 12 months, and also paid a good price, because sometimes it's like, oh, you call it 10 family, and like in Jersey markets, like $150,000 a unit is a halfway decent price. And if you see somebody paid $80,000 a unit, and you got a building and they want $150 a unit,
they're not touching.
What are the odds of them paying market value, right? So just be cognizant. Like I just pay attention to those small little intricacies that I think is important when you're calling somebody, because it's like that person wants to steal.
Yeah, for sure. I think it looks like probably my next action is just go try to find a buyer, call anyone I know so I can prospect for that specific buyer.
Yeah. And also know that, like, okay, let's say you don't have any buyers. Let's say brand new, starting from zero. I don't care, whatever the background history, right? I would recommend that you, let's just say as an example, you find a market somewhat near you, decent price point, okay? Don't prospect stuff that's at 500 grand. You need to be in a million plus minimally. And I obviously know that in South Dakota, that's a little, the higher price points are harder to come by unless it's a much larger property. What I'd recommend though is this: trying to be as close to $1 million or more as possible in as close of a market to you as possible. That doesn't need to be where you live. Okay.
Sure.
But what I would recommend you doing is, because the cool part about commercial, a large majority of commercial property owners are that you would call for a selling purpose, saying, hey, would you be open to selling your property? Unlike residential, in the commercial world, they're also commonly buyers.
Yeah, I noticed that on one of your videos. I was like, it was so smooth. You're like, okay, look, if you don't want to sell, are you interested in buying? And he's like, yeah, oh yeah, what do you got? And it's like, oh yeah, duh, they're business people. They're not emotionally attached to this house they've lived in for 30 fucking years. It's just business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like they're large majority of the time investors, right? So let's talk about your local market, right? Like, so let me do this. Maybe I can have a little bit of fun with you. Hold on one second. I'm gonna try to do this with you in real time. So give me 1 minute. So what I'm gonna do is that on Reotomy, I'm gonna share my screen in a minute, and I'll go through your local market, and I'm gonna show you how with Reotomy you can easily have a lead list that can be lucrative for you. So what's your county?
Pennington.
Okay, so really cool opportunity with this software. And this is why I'm obsessed with Reotomy. I'm the biggest fan of Reotomy because it does a lot of things that, like, literally almost everything you need it to do, it does. Literally, if it had a dialer to it and a little bit more of a function for reminders, it probably would be the best software on planet Earth. You probably wouldn't need anything else. So when it comes to commercial, ready? So all we're gonna do is this. It shows you every property. There's 20,423 commercial properties. This is everything labeled commercial. Obviously, you have some, vacant land in commercial zoning that will be there as well. But if you go to property type as an example, you can see that 1,000 multifamilies. This is 2 families, 4 families, and up. It actually, for whatever reason, it has 2 families in here. Weird. I don't know. I never understood why it does, but it does. So it has some benefit to that. But multifamily, 2 units plus, industrial buildings, office buildings, shopping centers, restaurants I really hardly ever use, commercial general for whatever reason. A lot of properties are actually zoned commercial general, are tagged under the property type of commercial general, even though they might be a retail center. It might be a multifamily. It might be industrial. So it kind of it's like they haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a catch-all. Other retail is typically like single tenant stuff for the most part, but again, you can look at it. Hospitality, pretty self-explanatory. Hotels, motels, and again, there's a lot of others here. I know in South Dakota, there's probably a lot of land. Just be cognizant that, like, also Reotomy is not a perfect software. So there could be some mixed stuff in here, which you can sort through the other filters. Let's just take your county as an example. If you wanted to call this county, let's just say there was industrial, because the one thing I actually want to turn on real fast is phone numbers. So
does this thing pull contacts for you as well, so you're not having to skip trace elsewhere?
Yes, exactly what I was trying to show you.
Damn.
You can go to more filters. You can go to owner. You can go to includes a phone number. And again, Reotomy is not a perfect software, near as anything else, but numbers are fairly decent. Okay. Includes a phone number. Out of the 20 some odd thousand, there's down to 14,813. This is gonna get really cool. Watch this. So now we want to go to more filters. Under owner, you can sort things like, as an example, let's just say they have 3 minimum properties in their portfolio. And then you can do assessed value of, let's just say, $2 million plus. Wow. Then on top of that, you can see that you can go to things like let's just say we just do by person, so it's not big businesses. We go to apply. Now watch how cool this gets. Hold on, it's even better. So 723 properties. These are tagged to an owner who has that criteria. But this is where it gets really cool. There's an owners tab where now there's 325 people who own that 1,700 properties I just mentioned. And they give you their contact information. And you can see how many properties they own in your county. These people own, like, think about it. This person here owns 35 properties in your county. I would probably get to know Melody. Right. Mr. Eisenbraun would be a good person to know. Last time he bought something was 2020, though. I mean, you can go to last acquisitions date, right? You sort this by last acquisitions date. You can see, like, all the people who bought something somewhat recently. These guys all bought one property within the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Right. And they have 200. I mean, this is hundreds of millions of dollars of property. Again, you can go through a lot of these people and be like, oh, okay, I can see when they bought properties. February 2023, this person bought 3 properties in the last 12 months in your area.
Sure.
Right. Or owns 12 properties in your county of 24 properties that they own. Like John Walker would be a good person. I mean, these will be all the information you need, right?
Yeah, for sure.
To know who to reach out to for your buyers. And you can even get more specific, right? So you can even go over here and you can even go to property type. And let's just say, like, what would be, like, if you could choose any asset class that you have, like, the most experience around?
Multifamily.
Great. So you check the box in multifamily, 34. There you go.
Nice.
So now there's 34 owners who fit all this criteria, multifamily specific. And you can even see what their portfolio consists of. This guy's 75% multifamily. This guy's 100% multifamily, 51, 60%, you know, so you can see all their criteria of what they look to buy. And you can see when they bought something last, you can see how many properties are, you know, that they own in your county that meet the criteria, right? So this is everything you'll need to know who you need to be speaking with. So it's all right there. And again, we already checked the box of the phone number. And now again, even if the phone number is only right 30% of the time, you got 34, that's 10, 15 people that you might have that'll be decent for you to be connecting with.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, again, like this is just one county. You can do this across several counties. So the last thing I'll just mention real quick also is this. Let me completely X out this type of thing. Let me go here. I'm gonna go to properties in a minute. I'm gonna get rid of your county in a minute. I want to do South Dakota instead, just the whole state. Whole state, ignore the owner's thing, it doesn't really matter. We're gonna get rid of portfolio assessed value and 3 properties. Then what you can do here is this. Let's go here. I want to make sure it just says person. Actually, I can take it off person. We're gonna hit apply. We're gonna go to properties. So it's saying in the entire state of South Dakota, you have 373,000 total commercial properties. Now, I'm not telling you to call all that because obviously dead center of this state's gonna be tough. You want to be towards the coasts, right? So what I would even do here is that now you can get more creative with your filtering. A lot of this is going to be, let's just say as in the beginning, let's say you do only, so you have retail, you're going to focus on shopping centers, retail. These are the 3 asset classes I would focus on. You do some industrial. I probably wouldn't do aircraft facilities. It's probably not going to be much for you. Multifamily as well. Let's just say we check all the boxes and we're going to hit apply. So between these 3 asset classes in the entire state of South Dakota, you only have 7,900 properties. This is a really interesting thing to note because keep in mind that like in an auto dialer, you're able to do a substantial amount of dials fairly quickly. So in the beginning, I would probably err on the side of more. So I would probably also add in commercial general and just hit apply. And the last thing what we'll do, which will really help you sort out some things, is tax basis. Okay. So the tax amount, which is like, okay, for an average $1 million property, what do you think your taxes are roughly?
I have no idea on that one.
I'm saying a single family house. Take a single family house.
Yeah, single family house, you're looking at like $300,000 house, looking at like a $2,000 a year tax. So
got it. So like something like somewhere between like 7 and 12, 7 and 15.
Yeah.
So let's just say we do a minimum of $7,000 in taxes. This is just to eliminate the small stuff. I mean, obviously you're down to 3,784. Let's say we go down to, we'll go down to $5,000 to start, just because you want to give yourself a good amount of properties to call. There you go. So this is where you'd start, right? You got 5,425 properties. That's your market. You got 5,500 properties to comb through. Now, again, I'm going to be honest with you. That's a small market. It's a small market.
Yeah, for sure.
So you might have to go out. You might have to go out to Minnesota. You might have to go out to the neighboring states. You might have to. But I would say focus on this first, right? Because there's a lot of opportunity there and it's a lot easier when it's here. Even if it's 8 hours away, I don't go, dude, I live in South Beach. I'm right now in South Beach and I'm selling properties in New Jersey. I'm not getting on a plane. So like, you don't need to go see the property, but I'm like, I am also not listing a property for sale. Like 90 times out of 100, if the property is too high a value, I'm not stupid when I also, because a lot of people get this, like I feel like, because I get this question a lot. When people basically, this is all that happens. When someone is telling me a price that's anything north of where I know I can get a deal done, just like somewhere in the residential space here, let me exit this out. Obviously, I'm going to go like, hey, so would you be totally against having my team and I market the property for you to see if we can get you the best price possible, right? Yeah. We'll flip it to a listing script. And what happens commonly is either they're actually not a motivated seller, very common also in residential. And if that is the case, obviously we'll also go the buyer route. We'll try to push the buying side. Sure. And a lot more of the time, they're more commonly a buyer than they are a terrible seller. So I'm not going to just list a property to list a property, because it's like, if hypothetically, like what's an average price for a multifamily right now? You can give me any for a price per unit.
Yeah, if it's a small multi, price per unit. I think it's like 75
grand a door. Okay. Yeah. Imagine if you're talking to a seller who's got a 10 family, and instead of 75 grand a door for 750 grand, they want $2 million. I'm not going to list the property. I don't need 150 realtors calling me saying, hey, your property's overpriced. My guy wants to come in at 750. I'm like, no shit. Yeah. I agree. And I already offer them 750. Like I already do all that. So yeah. I'm 6 steps ahead of that, to the point where like I already know the pathway. Okay. So I'm not gonna just I don't need the realtor phone calls. I don't need it. But if they're begging me to sell their property, I'm like, listen, you either need to be at this price or we're going to list the property for sale and just know like what's going to happen. Everyone's going to come into that. We're so direct with people.
That's worked well for me in the past. I had a multifamily guy that was certain it was worth the world because he had built it himself. He was the contractor. And so he was super emotionally attached. And it was like, come on, guy, 6 months, nothing moved. All I got was phone calls about it being overpriced. I finally got him to realize it, dropped the price, sold it.
And it's like, we will send somebody 5 to 10 offers from different buyers while it's off market and just do the same thing. So I avoid all the realtor phone calls.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So like I'm doing all the same things that you would do if it was listed. I'm just not, I don't need to take a listing to take a listing.
Yeah, I agree. Same.
It's not how I do most of my business. So
I always tell people I don't get paid to put a sign up.
Exactly. And I'm not in that business. Like, I'm not here to just list your property for sale and hope or pray your property sells. On top of the fact that I already have 10 people who want to buy your property at market value. Why would I need to list it? Right. So, that's the game we play. We'll get you set up with Rihanna. You can easily export to this list. You're going to be able to export, I think, about 1,000 leads every single month. So this will give you about 5 or 6 months worth of opportunity. Or what you can do is you can just pay an extra $100 per 1,000. You can pull the full 5,000 or plus or whatever in your first month, and that way you just have it. That would be where I start. Hit the list, go through a dialer on Mojo, and use the sales script that we've talked about. And I think that'll be a good place for you to start.
Sounds good. Awesome.
Any other clarification you need?
No, I don't think so. I think that'll get me started. You said if I have some sort of a deal, so I have a couple of commercial properties that people have said they might want to sell. I think the one is exactly what you're talking about. I think he's overpriced. He's not super motivated. He's just trying to see if he's going to get money because he doesn't want to list. He's like, I don't want people knowing I'm trying to sell it. And I'm like, so how the fuck are you going to sell it? I don't know.
What do you want me to do here?
But I'm curious about if I can get a second opinion on a property from you guys. That's on Wednesdays, you said, on the Wednesday
every
call?
Wednesdays during the training, I open it up for Q&A a lot. So just anytime I do that, you can just be like, hey, I have a property I need, I'd love for you to take a look at. Just give me, you give me the address. I'll do it all live with everybody, and we'll go through the deal.
Sounds good.
I appreciate you a lot, my man. Happy New Year, and we'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week. Thanks.
Whatever. You got it.